Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Amy and I am on a financial freedom journey with my family. I share all about that and more on my channel. Today we are having another episode of our budget review series. You guys seem to really be enjoying these and I'm absolutely loving them. I have a bunch in the hopper that have been submitted, so I'm super excited to be working through those. If you want to have a budget review done by me, feel free to use the link in the bio to submit your review. The more detailed you can get in your form, the better your review will be. So make sure you spend some time on it and break things down as much as possible. And I would love to film more of these, so definitely check that out if you're interested. But today we're gonna be going over Carly's budget. She is 30 years old and she lives in Florida. So let's go ahead and get into it. So Carly is a physician assistant. She is single and her annual gross income is about $111,000. Her short-term financial goals are to build up her savings and build up her investments. She currently has 2 debts. She has a car lease for $876 a month, and she has a student loan for $476 a month. She has about $80,000 in savings and about $30,000 in investments. Her biggest financial struggle is saving money, so sending money to savings. And some of her long-term financial goals are to save for a future wedding, a house, and future kids. So let's go ahead and go into Carly's debt overview, and then we will go into her budget after that. All right, so Carly really only has one item on here, and I want to talk about it because I'm not really doing a full debt plan for this. So she does have a car lease. So obviously that is not really something that she would be paying off necessarily, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. I want to focus on the student loans. She does have $126,000 of student loans. They are currently on an income-driven repayment plan, which is why her payment is only $476. I don't know the interest rates on these loans, but she is doing public student loan forgiveness. So she is not intending necessarily to pay these loans off. She is just going to be making her minimum payments while she's on that income-driven repayment plan, and that will eventually forgive her student loans. I get a lot of questions about how I feel about public student loan forgiveness as someone who paid off pretty similar amount of debt myself. I would have never qualified for public student loan forgiveness because I did not work in that industry. I work for a for-profit company, and so I would never have qualified for that. However, I do think it's a really good program for people who do qualify, and I have seen it work. I've seen people get their student loans forgiven. It is real. It is promised to you when you sign your federal student loan documents. Public student loan forgiveness is guaranteed in the program. It is legally required to be offered to you. So it is real. I know there has been some drama online with a certain individual, Dave Ramsey maybe. Don't want to say names, but I've heard a lot of his podcasts about how he doesn't believe in it and doesn't recommend it. And while I can understand that, I also think that it's dangerous to say that it's not real because it's legally guaranteed to you. So yeah, anyways, how I feel about it is if you qualify for it, I'm all for you taking it. I think that that's why it's offered. You just have to be okay with waiting. And I know that that can be really difficult. I think that Carly in her budget form had said that it was a difficult decision for her and that she was feeling kind of anxious about it. So yeah, I mean, I think that it is a good program. I think that it will save you a lot of money, especially so her minimum payment right now is $476. I don't know how long she's been on the public student loan forgiveness. I don't know how many payments she's already made, but even if we were just gonna say that her payment was gonna be $476 for the next 10 years while she's doing public student loan forgiveness, she would only be paying $57,000 on this $126,000 loan. So that, I mean, yeah, if you qualify for it, I think that it's a great program. So I'm not going to try to talk her out of it. I think that it makes sense for people who qualify for it when it makes sense. Now there's people maybe that doesn't make sense for. Not everyone wants to wait 10 years for their loans to be forgiven, and I can totally understand that side of it too. So I think it's just kind of what you're comfortable with. If you feel like you want or are willing to wait, then I think that it can be a good program for people. So that's all I'm gonna say on that. I'm not going to focus on paying off her student loans because that is not something that she wants to prioritize based on her budget review. So I'm not going to prioritize it for her. So that is all I wanted to talk about the debt. Let's get into the budget. I do have some thoughts on her budget. All right, so let's get into Carly's budget. I do have a note down here when I was doing this that I was like writing ideas down. So I will talk through those as we go. But for Carly's budget, she is budgeting based off of $64.52, which is her take home pay. Now, I don't know if she is investing already, but Carly, if you have a 401k or something through your employer, I would highly recommend that you are contributing to that. If you're not already, definitely take advantage, especially if there's a match. But even if there's not, it can be an advantage for you tax-wise, and also for your public student loan forgiveness. I believe it would help you with your income-driven repayment if you are contributing to a 401k, because I believe that money is not counted as like your adjusted gross income, but I'm not positive on that. Either way, if you have access to a tax advantage retirement account through your employer, if you're not already, I would definitely take advantage of that. And even if you are, maybe consider bumping up your contributions if you can do so. So $64.52 is what we're working with. These are all of her fixed expenses. So first fixed expense is a mortgage that she has for $1,964. She has her car lease for $877, student loans $467 that we talked about prior, cable $94, internet $75, gym $43, Pilates, I'm assuming this is some sort of like Pilates membership, $119, electric $80, water $90. Again, nothing too crazy here. Now, the car lease, I would not personally lease a car, but I do understand that some people do prefer to lease cars. So I'm not going to necessarily tell you that it's the wrong decision, but I will say that $877 is pretty expensive. So it might be worth maybe trying to save up to buy a car in cash. That is my personal preference. I'm not going to necessarily put that on anyone, but just from my perspective, I personally would rather like save up the cash for a car, buy a car, and then be able to use that, for quote unquote free, but yeah, $877 is pretty high, but with her income, I don't think that it's like crazy, especially because it seems like she has a pretty good handle on her fixed expenses otherwise. So that's my only real comment here. Cable, $94. Cable's not something that I see very often in budgets anymore, but if cable is important to you, then all for it. But if you maybe aren't using it, I would consider canceling it and maybe just doing some like subscription services instead, because again, $94 is a little bit high, but if you love cable and use it, like I'm all for that. No real other comments on the fixed expenses, but total fixed expenses for Carly was $3,809. That leaves her remaining at $2,643. So let's go up to our variable expenses. So she had indicated $220 for groceries, $100 for gas, $100 for restaurants, $600 for spending, and $130 for nails. Now, I do think that these are pretty reasonable. Groceries maybe seems slightly low, but if that's really what you're spending, then I think that's fine. And restaurants maybe would be a little bit low. Carly did not indicate in anything that she struggled with overspending necessarily, but she did indicate that her biggest financial struggle was sending money to savings. So I guess I would want to get to like the root of that. Like, what is the problem with sending money to savings? Are you spending it? Or is it like a mental block with saving? So that would be my question for Carly, is like, what is your problem with saving? Is it that you are overspending? If you are overspending, then we probably need to do some work on these and maybe increase them. $600 for spending is slightly high, I would say, in comparison to maybe what others spend. But if that is realistic for you, then that's great. That's why I wouldn't change this for you. $130 for nails, again, seems pretty reasonable. And everything else seems, pretty on par. But if you are overspending, let's take another look at this and maybe bump some of these up so that you can kind of prevent the overspending. You have room in your budget to do so. So I want to give you permission, if you are overspending and having trouble with that, adjust these. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're spending closer to $300 on groceries, I would rather you reflect that properly in your budget than trying to say that you're going to spend $220 and then never spend $220. So you know what I'm saying? Like, just look back at the last few months and see, like, are you overspending? What is the actual root cause of like the struggling to save? And then she does have some designated sinking funds already. So she did have $50 for medical. I would take a look at what medical plan you're on. And again, I don't know this because it wasn't put in the form, but like, if you do have a high deductible health plan, do you have access to an HSA? That might be a better place to put this other than a sinking fund. Or if you don't have a high deductible plan, do you have access to an FSA? Now, FSAs do have some additional clauses that you need to be careful with like rollover and, you know, expiring at the end of the year. So cautious with that. But, you know, you could maybe be taking advantage of like a tax advantage account for the medical. So definitely take a look at that. She had $100 for her dog and $100 for travel. So again, I don't know personally if there is any other sinking funds that you should be keeping in mind, but again, you do have room in your budget, so I would definitely take a look at those. And then just going down to my notes, I kind of had stopped at this point because there was like a lot of other considerations that we could do. So I already talked about the FSA and stuff. Travel bumped up. I think that you could bump this up if you want to. I know that's something that you talked about, maybe wanting to travel more. So that might be something. Cell phone, didn't see that in the budget. Not sure if that was missed or if maybe you're on someone else's plan. So take a look at that. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was what to do with what's left. So we have $1,243 left in the budget. I didn't put it anywhere yet because I'm not really sure what your priorities are necessarily. You did say you want to save and invest more, so you could split this evenly between saving and investing. A really good option for you would be to open a Roth IRA. You are within the income limits for 2025. The income limit for single was $150,000. You are under that at $111,000. So you could open a Roth IRA. That would be a really great option for you. You could focus on saving more. Now you do say you have $80,000 in savings. That's a really healthy amount of savings. So I'm not sure if you are earmarking that $80,000 a certain way, but you could definitely split this between investing, saving, anything like that. And again, like if you wanted to maybe start saving for a car to get out of leasing, that could be another option. But there's a lot of things that you can do. And then again, I would also just reiterate that like, let's take a closer look at these two buckets and make sure that we are sending things appropriately based on what you're actually spending, based on what you want to be spending, so that we are reflecting those properly in our budget. But yeah, that is pretty much all I had. It's always nice to have a big like leftover amount that you have a lot of options to do with. But yeah, I would just consider the Roth IRA. If you haven't already opened one, that would be a really great place to start. One other thing I wanted to mention was Carly has $30,000 in investments, and Fidelity put out they have put it out for years. It's like a little chart. I'll put a picture of it on the screen right now if you guys have not seen it. I'm caveating this with this is probably pretty conservative, but the goal or like the, you know, ideal situation would be by 30, which Carly just turned 30. By 30, they want you to have 1 times your annual salary invested. So 30,000 might be slightly low. I would increase your investments if that is something that you're able to do. I would definitely look into opening a Roth IRA and or maxing or trying to get close to maxing out your 401k if you have that option. But just wanted to reference that because that is something that I feel like is not shared a lot. Like people are always asking like, how much should I have saved for retirement? This is a good image or like just good starting point. And again, I do think it might be a little bit conservative, but it is kind of a good measure for you as you're getting older. Like I should have 1 time at 30, 2 times at 35, et cetera, et cetera. Just one measure of what is good to have, not necessarily like the Bible or like the only thought on that, but just wanted to share that because that is something that I've kind of tried to follow along with as I'm getting older, just using that as like a goalpost, so to say. So that is all I have for this video. If you guys have any comments or thoughts on Carly's budget, please leave those in the comments down below. I would love to hear your thoughts and how you would spend the leftover money on her budget. And I will talk to you guys in my next video. Bye guys.